met Foz, and this
lady has been a great waitress, right?
Thank you, appreciate it.
And Foz is what was this? 1111 Broadway, right?
1111 Broadway.
Right. But then, of course, I just had to finish the great linguine meal. I here with my buddy John Russo.
Hi.
And Alameda City manager for how long have we been known each other?
21 years.
21 years.
Yeah, but she wants to ask us a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was actually. Did you guys want to take a look at the dessert menu?
You want dessert?
Not
yes.
me.
He has a need, and
I'm stuffed. Thank you so much.
Can I get some more water for you?
Oh, by all means.
see, it's best place for service. I mean, I'm telling you, this is the best place. Come.
She'll take care of you. You take care of her. You'll be just great, right? Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. What do you think of the presidential race, John? Great to see you.
Nice to see you too. Presidential race obviously demonstrates how divided the electorate is. It also demonstrates conclusively that the Republican Party is in deep long-term trouble on the electoral map, and as time goes on, they will be in more and more trouble in the popular vote. This was an election. If you take some of my general rules about how incumbents do, this was an election the Republicans should have won. First of all, gasoline prices way up. That's a real marker in the vote. I know folks want to believe that elections are always about the nuances of great issues, but they're really about some very blunt instruments like how's the stock market doing, what's the price of gasoline, what's the unemployment rate. And with regard to those three markers, none of them were very good for President Obama. Now, put aside how much of that is his responsibility versus things he can't control, I'm not discussing any of that. I'm just saying that those markers would have indicated a Republican victory. The fact that with such a difficult economy and so many people out of work and such a high lack of consumer confidence, in that very difficult and treacherous environment for an incumbent, the fact that President Obama was able to win the popular vote is stunning and does not bode well for the National Republican Party.
I understand Mitt Romney got 2 million less votes than John McCain did 4 years ago.
That's startling because in many ways, putting aside, I'll say something that won't be popular with most of my friends, putting aside that Romney had to move to the right in the Republican primary, I actually think Romney's an attractive candidate.
Why?
In many ways. Because
he's candidate?
Well, that's his problem, was that he had to move right. But here you had someone who, remember, was able to be elected in a very liberal state like Massachusetts. That's not the same as getting, say, McCain, who was able to be elected in a very libertarian state like Arizona.
Great point.
So the fact that Romney could get elected in Massachusetts against a woman, and a very good woman, by the way, a classmate of mine from Yale.
Is that right?
Yeah, Shannon O'Brien, is who he beat in 2002. The fact that he was able to do that is demonstrative of the fact that he's a strong candidate. Certainly, he was the strongest candidate presented by the Republican field this year, which for
was University Knowledge is weak.
It was for a long time the Idiot of the Month Club.
Right.
Whether it was
999.
Right. It was the 999 pizza delivery guy. It was the Tea Party lady Bachman.
Yep.
It was
got narrowly reelected.
It was Rick Perry with the hair who couldn't remember that he had 3 points, but he could only remember 2 in the debate.
And the gay relationship in 2004, but that's another story.
And Newt Gingrich, who is really, talk about a retread. So when you look at it, that was there was the Donald Trump boomlet, which is a total joke.
Yeah.
That was a very weak field. They did pick in the end their best candidate, but they damaged him through all of the debates.
Folks, that was Donald Trump throwing cocks in the back. Sorry.
I think that was actually Donald Trump throwing his hair in the back. So, on the national campaign, the Republicans have a very difficult process in front of them. There is a historic analog to this, and that is the Democrats of the late 60s through the late 80s, up until Bill Clinton. What's happened is the Republicans are now enthralled to what I call their button people. the people who go to their state conventions and go to their national convention and wear lots of buttons, who want to tell you what's what. Those guys tend to be very uncompromising. They're running the show at the GOP, and
Some would say the white sheets people too.
well, I think there's an element of that, but I don't think it's as prominent as people think. Here's as I see the Republican Party. Richard Nixon was able to move white urban ethnics out of the Republican Party and to take the South out of the Democratic Party into the Republican Party. With respect to the Old South, there was definitely racial issues involved there. Nixon was moving to try to preempt the Wallace vote, if you will, and absorb it. And then second, on the urban ethnics, that was kind of the genesis of the wedge issues like abortion, gay marriage, was to appeal primarily to Catholics, Irish, Italian, Polish, in the big cities to try to draw away. That was successful. It was certainly a politics of resentment. Next comes Reagan, which is the next iteration. Reagan put together a four-legged table. It was libertarians, it was business interests, big business interests, it was sort of militarist neocons, and fourth was what was then the moral majority, Jerry Falwell and his people, the evangelicals. Over time, Bush Sr. increased the authority of the evangelicals. Bush's son in 2004, who by the way won pretty good on the electoral map, but was very close again on the popular vote. The son Bush, in Karl Rove, his strategist, realized that the shock troops of the Republican Party were the evangelicals. They were the counterweight to the power of organized labor in the Democratic Party. And they activated those folks. Many people will remember that in 2004, the National Republican Party had a strategy of placing anti-gay marriage measures on state ballots to boost evangelical turnout. Well, now the Frankenstein monster has turned on its creator. And the Republicans are now stuck with a party in which the elements that most want government to intrude in people's lives, their personal lives, are now in the ascendancy in that party. And that's why...
Something not talked about on that, don't you think they were shocked by the response to marriage equality? What was thought to have been a mistake on Obama's part. People said Biden pushed him into it. Or he's going to lose the election earlier this year.
They shouldn't have been mistaken, and it is never a mistake to be on the right side of history.
Right, absolutely.
It's never a mistake.
I'm saying those on the GOP side probably thought, oh boy, we've got this in the bag. You're responsible.
Well, this is a broader problem on both sides of the aisle. I think people start to believe their own bull crap because they're only listening to people and news sources that agree with their predispositions. And so it's my sense that a lot of Republicans believed that that was a problem because they were told repeatedly it was a problem by sources like Fox. Yeah, again, I'm not trying to pick, I'm trying to be an analyst here, not an advocate. You have the same, just as large a problem on the left. With this kind of self-delusional, what goes for wishful thinking that poses as analysis.
Echo chamber thinking.
It is echo chamber thinking. You see that, by the way, in Oakland City Hall as well. So where the Republicans are now is they have created a coalition that cannot hold, certainly can't draw swing voters, certainly won't appeal to younger people, and that is one of the hearts of Republican philosophy is keep government out of our lives as much as possible. It's hard to be selling that line when all you're talking about is keeping government out of the process of protecting us through regulation from out of control business practices. And yet putting government into our lives by commanding us on issues that have to do, frankly, with religion. The other thing that has, I think, scared people off to the Republicans is the crazy denial of basic facts. Evolution, for example. Evolution is not, I mean, the Republicans have gotten to where you can have 99 people saying it's day outside, but if one person says no, it's night, even though the sun is brightly shining, they will try to portray that this is still something that is debatable, like evolution, like climate change, like the existence of the Internal Revenue Service. Those types of positions, I think, make the Republicans look out of touch. And there's no doubt the president was helped by the hurricane in New York. Not because of anything that happened in New York. You know, to me, that's more of yes, it was definitely beneficial to the president. I don't think it was that important. I think it's important when there's a big natural disaster that the subject arises, what is the role of the federal government? And you've got candidates that take two very different positions. In this case, it was bad luck for Romney that this happened when it did. This was God's October surprise.
Yeah.
You know, for all of my friends who believe that God is actually paying attention to electoral races, which I believe in God, but I don't believe God is paying attention to electoral races.
Well, I think it's for an entirely other purpose.
This was a tremendous October surprise and a judgment in some ways.
Now, why did the president win?
The president won because he had a very good ground operation, because the president has fashioned a new coalition and wins overwhelmingly with young people, and he should. The president won because in the end he didn't have to get dragged all the way to the left end of the political spectrum the way Romney had to be in order to win his party's nomination. I mean, the analog for the Republicans nationally is to look at what's happened to the Republicans in California. The Republicans in California now control no statewide seats. They have less than 1/3 of the state legislature. They can't win anything, and the reason they can't win anything is because back in, as an avatar, if you will, of what was to come, Pete Wilson decided in 1994 that he would try to win re-election by appealing to white fears over immigration, use some very heavy-handed commercials and such, alienated the Latino vote out of the party, and what you see in California is very, very much what you're likely to see nationally unless the Republicans start to listen to some of their cooler heads. People like Lindsey Graham, people like Rudy Giuliani. Those guys are saying we need to really have a serious discussion about where we stand on the demographic divide for the future of this country and where we've placed ourselves. And you'll hear a lot of noise from the spin machine that this is about the mainstream media misrepresenting Republican positions, blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. It's not. It's not that at all. The Republicans are the authors of this fiasco that they face. They are the authors of where they arrived by the way they handled issues like immigration, the way they've handled issues that have to do with race relations, that have to do with gender issues. When the Republicans can't get Senate seats in Indiana, can't hold a Senate seat in Indiana, and can't win a Senate seat in Missouri, that's pretty heavy, a pretty heavy judgment on where they've taken their party. It's and
with people who made comments about rape.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. It's those two senators, Senate candidates, Aiken and Murdoch. Aiken in Missouri, Murdoch in Indiana. Both of whom, I might add, were Tea Party candidates. In Murdoch's case, Murdoch beat Richard Lugar in the primary. Now, Richard Lugar, again,
I thought that was a shock.
It's a shock result. Richard Lugar was one of the most respected members of the Senate. A longtime chair during earlier eras of the Foreign Relations Committee, and a pragmatist in many ways, former mayor of Indianapolis. And he was eliminated from the national scene, not by the Democrats, who could have never beaten him in a million years in Indiana. That gunshot to the head of having a Republican senator in Indiana was delivered by the Tea Party.
Yep, that's right.
Very similarly to what happened in the Democratic Party through the 70s and 80s, where in the primaries, Democrats were consistently nominating candidates who were too far left to